Any council member may call for the question, which, if approved by the council, ends debate. Reference Communication 976, introduced by Ms. Ford.
Ms. Ford? Thank you. Move to approve Resolution 485-14.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Ford, second by Ms. Willie. Thank you. Ms. Ford? There are times when calling for the question is an appropriate protocol. We've all been in debates that seem to just be circular, and I'm not trying to take away that particular right. However, I have really watched this particular council, and it's different than other councils in previous terms. I'm getting a lot of calls from various districts, not just my district, from various districts saying, I did not get a chance to hear Councilmember X on this subject. And I said, well, there was a call for the question. So I wasn't going to do this, and then it just continued to get worse and worse, and so finally I just decided to go ahead and let the council make the decision. I brought this resolution forward to change the rule in fairness to each one of us, to allow each one of us to speak, but more importantly, in fairness to the public who have elected each one of us and wants to hear what each of us has to say on a particular issue. This resolution does not require a council member to speak, but it certainly will give them the right to speak at least once before the question is called. The public's right to know and what their council member thought processes are on any particular issue, in my opinion, is a matter of transparency in government. I think when a person doesn't speak at all and just votes, I think that it's legal, and it happens all the time, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with it. But sometimes I think it does a disservice to the public. And the public is the reason that we are here. We've got voted in by the public. It's the reason we have video conferencing around this island, to allow the public to testify toward us and for us to speak toward them, and have as many people be able to participate in government and understand the issues. A great deal of being able to speak is to the opportunity to explain to each other, as well as the public, what it is that we're really talking about, what pros and what cons there are, because there's a lot of issues that we deal with that are pretty cut and dried. We all agree that we want to get rid of the little fire ant. It's not an issue. Okay. But there are issues that have pros and cons, and you've got to figure out, is this particular matter something that we vote for or vote against, or does it need an amendment? How can you even get to the subject of an amendment until we all are on the same page and understand the issue? And sometimes the public doesn't understand. A lot of times comments are made so that the public will understand an issue in its totality. I ask for the council's support on this matter. In fairness, we do still operate in a democracy. We do still have freedom of speech, and I would hope that in the council that we would be fair to our colleagues. That's all I'm asking for, is fairness to the public and fairness to the colleagues that we work with. So please support this resolution. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Willie?
I support this, and I do think there's a place for call of the question. As you said, when we get passionate and go around in circles and reassert. But I think it's what we're talking about here is protecting the rights of the public to be informed. That's what it's all about. Do we want an informed public, or do we want to be able to stifle minority positions and therefore not allow the public to be informed? So it's really a simple question to me in terms of open government and transparency and respect for each other. A lot of times I just soon not hear whatever anybody else has to say, and if I was in the majority, but I think sometimes we're in the majority and sometimes we're in the minority, and it's important that we each represent a different district, are allowed to voice our opinion, and basically what we're doing here is to just ensure that there's not abuse of a parliamentary procedure, and I think it's pretty simple, and I appreciate that you brought it forward, and it was, the last time it came up was with regard to the question of the large-scale mass burn incinerator and whether we ought to open up the process based on very restrictive requests for proposals, and we had overwhelming public support for that, and yet it was the communication to the public was pretty immediately cut off, so that some who wanted to speak were unable to, and I think that was unfortunate. So I yield. I think it's a simple question, and thank you for bringing it forward, Ms. Ford.
Thank you. Ms. Poindexter.
Yeah, everybody's making reference, the reason why this came up made reference to the large-scale incinerator, which I would say it's recalling the RFP, but I did have a lot of dialogue with my constituents in my community, and I feel at the committee level, when it came before the committee, we had a lot of dialogue on it as well. And I heard some of the testimonies say some refer to it as a debate or a discussion. That is why we have committee meetings. And if Miss Komata, is that her name? Yeah, Miss Komata had referred to what she said was a healthy discussion, or what she considered to be a good discussion, and gave an example of what had happened this morning, and that's what she'd like to see. But I'd like to point out to the public, that was a planning committee meeting. So a lot of times I've heard mainly all the our council members state that a lot of the heavy discussion and debate happens at the committee meetings, and that's why we have committee meetings that brings it forward to the council meetings. We have all 9 of our council members that are committee members on each committee. And that's where a lot of the discussion takes place. That's why when you come to the council meetings, you see a lot of times we don't even discuss a lot of stuff because it was already done and we didn't want to be repetitive. So I feel that the Roberts Rules and what we have as part of the democracy as calling for the question, when we feel that because you still have to vote for the call on the question. If I vote for the call on the question, that means I feel I've had enough discussion. So the democracy there is where as a body we get to vote for that. I don't think that takes anything away, and I think the chair at some point, can I ask John, can I ask you to come forward? I just had a question on the ability of the chair during a council meeting. And because a lot of times the chair can ask, if anybody has an objection, because I know I do sometimes, but not at a council meeting, but as a chair, if anybody has any objection to me taking this out of order or whatever. But is there something pertaining to the call of the question where the chair could say, would anybody object to hearing so-and-so first? Or, what does Robert's Rules allow for?
John Hendricks, Legislative Research Branch. Roberts doesn't talk about that too much, nor do our council rules. However, I think I understand what you're you're asking me as far as if someone were to make a motion where they had properly had the floor and called for the question, and there was a second, could the chair at that point, much as we do it when somebody asks for a postponement, and perhaps people haven't got to speak on the main motion yet, could the chair request the maker of the motion to, withhold that and ask if anybody else in the council would like to speak before that? They could do so delicately, absolutely, because they could do that, but what they couldn't do is outright deny the person the right to make that motion and the second.
And to do a discussion.
Right, the chair doesn't have that authority.
Have
to
the
say,
ability
no,
to
we're
say
not ready for that
discussion.
yet. Yeah,
Okay.
but they could appeal to the maker to say, you know what, everybody hasn't had a chance to speak yet. Would you withhold
So
your
it's an
motion?
appeal, it's not a discussion.
Would it be an appeal from the chair?
Point of order, please. Madam Chair, we're getting incorrect information. The rule says that the call for the question is not debatable. That means nobody can talk about it. Thank you.
But that's not a debate, though.
Myself personally, I wouldn't consider that a debate. A debate
right.
is when you enter into deliberation discussion about the merits of something. I wouldn't consider that debate because the chair isn't...
It's a request.
Well, it depends on how they do it. I said it'd be a delicate matter. They'd have to do
Right.
it based upon the premise that, what you're talking about is that everybody hasn't had a chance to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
But even if that wouldn't be a consideration, I'm just kind of concerned that we have our practices in place with Robert's rules, and I think we have that's why we have committee meetings. Unless we do away with committee meetings and let's just do all council meetings and let everybody talk there, because we can do the same thing. A lot of times, that's why when we come to the council meetings, we've already, like I say, they say, Ms. Poindexter, is your motion to, oh no, I think I've said enough at the committee level, and then we vote on it, So I think the public may have some type of I don't know if misperception or what it is, because even with Ms. Komata saying that she appreciated the discussion and that's how it should be, and rightfully so, because that was at the committee level. But we can also still have discussions at the council levels, because a lot of times we do bring in amendments to here. So those are when, if there's an amendment, we've had a call for the question many times that we voted down because we felt, no, there's an amendment, we need, so that's the decision of the entire body. So I don't want to take that changing rules just because maybe some of us may not be satisfied with certain things that happen, and what are the consequences down the road. So anyway, I'm not supporting this at this time, so I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yoshimoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This brings up, I guess, when you look at Robert's rules, it's always looking for balance. Balance in terms of making sure the minority has their opportunity to participate in debate, as well as controlling the meeting, providing order, and moving things along. So there is this tension inherent in Robert's rules. When you look at the process and the call for the question, in and of itself, it's very clear and straightforward. The difficulty lies in trying to fit those rules within our rules. Most of us realize and understand that our rules are based on Robert's rules, but there's also times when we deviate from Robert's rules when it's more tailored to our needs. So, when I look at this question, I've been on both sides of the call for the question, meaning sometimes I voted for it, sometimes I didn't, and the hard part is we don't have an opportunity to discuss, whether we want to vote for it or not. Like Ms. Ford pointed out, it just cuts off debate. And that's actually the real stifling part, is the rule in and of itself. So I'm going to touch on a couple of areas, so hopefully, people can follow along, because I'm going to take a few minutes here. What Ms. Poindexter says is correct. Most, if not all of the time, we discuss everything pretty thoroughly, at least that we're aware of, in committee, right? So many times, or sometimes, we've had the meat of the discussion in committee, so council is more of a summary or just following up on little things. So just for the public to understand that, that is the process. One option is, I think I mentioned this before, is to have everything originate in council, then make referrals out down to particular committee if it necessitates having further discussion. So that's one way. I think Honolulu does it that way. That makes sense. And that way, if something is easily addressed, we can just have one reading and be done with it. We can be more time efficient. So that's one approach to it, right? But what Ms. Ford is trying to do, I understand what she's trying to say, because sometimes there may be other things that come up in the second reading that may not have come up in the first reading, and that inherent is that tension that Robert's Rules provides, and so that's why I think it requires a supermajority to pass, if it should pass. But again, the hard part is, well, you can't debate it. That's the stifling part. So my suggestion is, to Ms. Ford, is that why don't we think about, or council members to think about, if this council wanted to modify the rules so that you allow some debate on the actual call for the question. I know it goes against what Robert's Rule says, but we run this council. It's us, it's our county, so we should be able to tailor our rules to the way we want. So maybe the middle ground is that if the body would want at least maybe 1 minute to say, you know what, this is the way I feel on the call for the question, hear me out, and then so on. Because I've been on the short end of the call for the question. I wanted to say something, and then I couldn't because, you're kind of stuck there because you want the public to know how you feel, and at the same time, you feel like the discussion is kind of going circular too sometimes. So, my suggestion is that, we amend our rules that allows for that. That way, at least the vote on the call for the question becomes more informed because all of us can hear what we're saying, but it's not going to be this long talk. It'll just be a 1 minute thing where I'm for this because I'm against this because of whatever, right? And that way, all 9 of us can say, okay, now I understand, what else he has to say. So, because to me, if I had the opportunity to say, wait, I want to vote this way, but I want to say this to explain, that gives me that opportunity, then maybe we can go that way. And then hopefully the person who wants to continue the discussion has that time to say, please let me ask further questions because I have A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. So that's just my thought out there. We don't have to follow Robert's Rules verbatim because, this is our board, our council, so we can do what we see that fits for us. So anyway, just food for thought. Thanks.
I'm not sure who was first. Mr. Kerr, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. With what Mr. Yoshimoto just said, I do like that. I like the balance of maybe making it like a minute debatable because that would allow somebody to express themselves. Like, could you withdraw that from it? But let's, you know me. I just try to say it like I feel it and see it sometimes. And I think in the past we've had some go around. We've had some call for the questions that were on maybe a little frustrating to certain people, but I think it was very much in that process in which it was meant to be. The real deal is that we had this waste energy issue come up last time. That's what's happening here. Before that, like Ms. Poindexter said, we had it in committee. We talked about it. Everybody went through. They expressed themselves. When something is brought to the council and we talk about respect, something that we all voted on, something that we approved, and you're going to come back through part way and put something out there that it really has no substance. It's just, let's just talk about something. We don't even have any information about it. When something like that comes up, I feel like, and it's coming into committee, it's coming into council like it did last time, we should move through it as fast as we can. And last time, Ms. Willie got a chance to speak. She had her 5 minutes. Ms. Ford had a chance to speak. I sat back, I waited. Anybody else? Nobody else was talking. So then I said, yeah, let's call for the question. Because that's not a debate at that time. There's no debate. We've already said what we've had to say. Let's just move forward. It's not debating. It's just giving people further opportunity just to make statements. When there has been a debate, we've gone back and forth, and I think we do a pretty good job. And there's been times where somebody has requested to not call for the question or not postpone because we want to talk a little more. And sometimes we've gone for it, sometimes we haven't. That's part of the process. But to come and say that this is un-American or not democracy is challenging because this is democracy. It sounds more potentially like socialism or something because democracy is we're a body. We vote. We make choices. No one person can call for the question and control that and stop it. It's put out there to say, I have a feeling, or somebody has a feeling that this should, let's just vote on it. And then it takes 6 of the 9 members present to actually have that go through. To me, that is democratic. That is part of that democracy. It would be like saying that during a presidential election, the president has to win by 60 or 70% because it has to be a larger majority instead of 50% plus 1. That's democracy. It's not all 100%. However, I don't have a problem with people talking. That's what's happened pretty much every time we've done this. Everybody that's wanted to talk has had a chance to talk. But at a certain point, it doesn't make any sense to debate, especially when there's something that you don't have any information about. And it just begins to sound and feel very political. That's where it gets challenging. That's where I think things need to stop, and that's where we've been. So it does come back to respect, and I think we do a generally decent job of respecting each other. But I think when there is something brought up that is just out of place, we should move through it as fast as we possibly can. And the ability to have the call for the question is there for that reason. And again, it takes 2/3 majority. If there were maybe 5 members that could do it, just a regular majority, we should up that because that might be a little bit too much. I'm not seeing a problem. This is coming from a resolution that, honestly, no offense, but didn't have any place. We should have waited until we had the information to have a proper discussion, and only then can we have a proper discussion because we have the information that we need. Just like there's a rule, or excuse me, there's a motion that you can postpone indefinitely. You can move to postpone indefinitely, which basically just puts it away. You don't vote on it up or down. It just puts it away. That's just another option that we have, just like we have call for the question. But again, no one person can dictate that. But I really do like what Mr. Yoshimoto was saying about finding some balance in this, where we could have maybe a minute debate, which would give the opportunity to pull that back. So I'm just really frustrated where this has gone to, and with what's coming on the paper, and all of a sudden it's not American, it's not democracy. It's what we're here doing. We're trying to figure this out and trying to be a democracy. And if it's going to take everybody being okay with it, that's not the case. And the fact of the matter is, everybody that wanted had a chance to speak, with the exception of maybe Ms. Eoff or Mr. Yoshimoto at times, because they're the chair, everybody's had a chance to speak. So I don't understand why this is here. So I'm not going to be supporting it, but I will support what Mr. Yoshimoto said. I yield.
I'd like to respond to that.
Just a minute.
Okay.
Is anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Kanoha.
To me.
I'm going to go through
Thank
the
you,
first
Madam
round.
Chair. I appreciate everybody's comments on this, and it is an important issue. This is democracy in action, and we are doing democratic processes, and through this is parliamentary procedure and the Robert's Rules of Order, and our own council rules, which is what we stand by. Whether we do call to the question or postponements, call for the question has checks and balances attached to it. Checks and balances being you need a second, you need a supermajority for it to pass. So this is an extremely democratic process. Call for the question is democratic in its principles. So for the paper to explain that this is an un-American, undemocratic process, quote unquote, is also frustrating to myself, being part of this process. But I do appreciate it being brought up, though. This is a question of whether debate is needed further for what we're speaking about. If we keep on going round and round in circles, it doesn't make any sense to keep on going. We wanna. For myself, I try to keep it to the point. Instead of wasting wasting taxpayers' time and money. If we're going round and round in circles, repeating the same things over and over again, which is why I really appreciate Mr. Yoshimoto's point of the call for the question to state if we have a debate after that of why we agree for a call of the question or not. If myself, I don't think that there's a reason for a call for the question. I wanted to say something that has not been said previous. I'd really like that opportunity to say why I wouldn't support a call to the question. But if I think that there's no new information going to be come up, we've already discussed this in length thoroughly, then I think call for the question is extremely useful. It's extremely appropriate at that time. Whether other members feel that differently, that's their business. But why I vote for certain ways is why I vote for that way. I feel it's appropriate for certain actions in that time frame. So I really like the consensus part of this with the middle ground here with the call for the question in what was said by Mr. Yoshimoto, and I really appreciate that point of view. We do live in a democratic process. We do live in majorities and minorities, and it's very important to hear from both majority and minority. So I think what Mr. Yoshimoto was explaining, I think, is a really great point, and I will support that aspect of this debate that we're talking about today. But I just wanted to explain why I think call for the question is extremely important when it's done the right way. So I'll yield to that.
Anyone else on the first round? Mr. Onishi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I've been in a lot of discussions, on the council, and some of the council members are correct. Sometimes we just go in one circle, same discussion, same thing. And what is funny sometimes is that some council members, like at one time, I remember this one discussion we had, 3 different council members talked about the same issue, or they even asked questions to the administration about an issue, but in different ways. But the bottom line was the same question. But they asked the same question in different ways. And so after a while, to me, it just, like, we're not getting anywhere. If I can see if there's going to be something suggested or something to improve it, then fine. But if it's going to just be the same issue and just pound at people or pound at this certain issue with no solutions or any ideas of how we can make it better, then discussion should be ended. Because I don't foresee anything improving. Like, for example, when we had my committee, when we had the legislatures in front of us, Senator Ruderman had mentioned that he needed to leave at one certain time. So I asked council members if you folks have questions to ask them because they're here now. But council members, like one mentioned, oh, I did this, I did that, this, that. And it's like, not about you. It's like, do you have any questions for our legislatures? Because they're here now, and one of them will be leaving, and once he leaves, that's it. So sometimes, we need that option, and to me, that's true. That's part of the rules. We cannot be changing the rules depending on how we feel, because if it's against a person, and you cannot change. Like in a basketball game, because I like to travel, so I'm going to put one rule in that I can be allowed to travel with the basketball. But then, council member Poindexter cannot travel at all. So every time she runs with the ball, she's going to be called for a violation. So you cannot pick and choose. We need to stick to what the rules are. And the more we change, the worse we get. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ligon.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I've been listening to everyone, and I'm a strong advocate for fairness. And what's the best way to do this fairly? How about, I have one suggestion. What if a council member hasn't spoken and someone called for the question, then that council member should be able to speak? And the fact that when I was in here for this term, I don't think there ever has been where someone just blatantly right off the bat, introduced a bill or a resolution and called for the question. There has never been a situation that had happened. So if we want to add, and I don't think we need to, because we have been very courteous to every council member here and respectfully wanted to listen to each one before casting a vote. We vote by majority. We represent our district. And we should be given a chance to speak. And we have been given a chance to speak. Sometimes we speak way too much. So I just wanted to say that we have a call for the question, and I don't believe we're abusing it. I felt every council member had an opportunity to speak, and we give testifiers 3 minutes to make their point and make their facts. Why can't we make our points and our facts in 5 minutes? Why do we need even more than that? That's my suggestion. I don't really think we need to do it. I feel like we're doing our job and representing as best as we can and voicing out the needs of our district. Thank you.
Thank you.